Welcome back to day 3. And those who are new, the 60 Days to Automate Challenge is really just about setting up all your tools and giving you the foundational skills to not just learn some prompts, not just learn the different workflows, but to set up a full automation system from marketing, sales, customer support, every single part of your business. And this week, we are really focused on setting up all of your automation tools. So today, we're going to be going over 2 popular tools in the automation space. You may have heard of them, but they're called Make.com, formerly Integrate, something like that, Intermate. They used to have a different name. And then there's also n8n, n8n. And these are the 2 tools that we're going to be going over today. So what are we going to be doing? We're going to be creating an automation that will be triggered as soon as a user fills out the form that we did in day 1. So those same forms that we set up in both Google and Microsoft, we're going to do the same thing today. So basically what we have here, if you remember, is we have our form. And when I go in here and I submit this form, so if I go in here and I preview it, just to recap, and have you ever created an automation, not and, must be greater than 0. I must have, let's see here. I did put a validation on this accidentally yesterday. So go ahead and update this. All right, next. And if you remember, depending on what they select in that form, it will go to a different place. What have you built? Lots of automations on Make, n8n, and Answer AI. So when someone submits this, we want to take an action. And if you remember from day 1, every single automation has really 4 components to it. There's the trigger, something has happened. And in this case, we're going to be keying off of when a new row is added to the spreadsheet. Because if you remember, when this actually gets submitted, this is connected to a spreadsheet so that when a new entry comes in, it will be shown on this row. So what we want to do though is when someone submits so the trigger is when a new row will happen. The input the user is putting in there. So we're actually determining, that we're having first name, last name, have they ever automated before, and whatever the comments are after that. Then now, before it was just putting that into a database. Now we're going to work on step 3, which is processing. And the simple act of someone submitting a form and then doing some process after it, in and of itself can give you a lot of latitude in what you can do. Because what we're going to be doing today is sending a thank you email from our very own email that we're going to connect to both Make. So that's our goal for today. And we're going to do this both in Google Sheets and in Microsoft Forms. So first off, before we get into Make and n8n, let me just tell you a little bit about Make and when they're used, when I use them, and my thoughts on both of them. Now, one tool that you might have heard about before that we won't be going over is Zapier. Honestly, I've never really cared for Zapier. I've never cared for the UI. I found that they are very expensive for what they do, and I just found that Make and n8n are a little bit more user friendly and or have more configurations, which I'll go over here in a minute. So Make, I guess it was formerly called Integromat. Now I know why they changed their name. It's basically a cloud-based automation platform that allows you to connect multiple different systems. And both of these tools are like that. So they allow you to connect. So if I go on here and I look at the different, so this is make.com. And if you look at the different apps and services that they connect to a ton of stuff from LinkedIn to Webflow to, all of your AI tools, Google Sheets, Airtable, some of these things you may not have heard, your Facebook pages, your calendar, And in this case, we're going to connect to Google Sheets, and we're also going to connect to Microsoft 365 Excel. So those are going to be the two things that we connect to. The other thing that we're going to be connecting to is email, the Outlook, and also Gmail, both of which they have out-of-the-box connections to. And we'll walk through the full how-to as part of this exercise. So when do you use it? So basically, if you need a straightforward, just cloud-based system that has a lot of popular apps, both of these tools have a big community. But if you want to quickly set something up, proof of concept this, and how we work in terms of my own automation is I have a very amazing person that works with me, Bisma, that helps set a lot of these up in make.com. And then I'll go and I'll create them in n8n. Because the pros of Make are that it's easy to get started. It is cloud-based. You don't need to set anything up locally. It can scale up, but then it starts to get expensive over time as your automation needs grow, because they charge per execution. And some of these workflows, at least that we're going to be creating, will take 10, 20 executions per row, right? So if you're analyzing 1,000 documents, that can add up extremely quickly. There's also limited ability to customize the existing modules. While you can create your own modules, and we've created one for Answer AI that we hope to have in the App Store pretty soon. You can't really, unless you create it from scratch, edit any of the existing ones. And it does require internet access for all the operations, which technically, if you're going with all of the cloud-based stuff, you would need internet access anyway. But that's where n8n comes in. So n8n has now been recently my go-to, and really the reason being is, well, a few things. One, you can self-host it, which is absolutely crucial for me. I do not want my content, everything out, on random databases somewhere. I just don't, as a business owner, want that for me or my customers. And we have pretty strict guidelines that we have to do for SOC 2 certification and a lot of those different pieces. So being able to host and all of the data and have it run our own local is very key. But because we can also run it locally, I can run it on my own machine. So a good example of this with n8n is that we essentially, as soon as I'm done recording this stream, which I just realized, yes, I am recording. Last thing you want to do is record this whole thing and it not be there. One of the things that you can do is essentially run it locally. So when this ends, it saves it to a folder. We'll have a local version on my own machine running that can look for that folder, chop it up into multiple different bits, analyze it. Plus, it allows me to use tools like OLlama, which we'll go over later. But basically, they're AI models that run on your own machine so that you can, and they're getting very powerful, so that you can actually process your entire file structure if you wanted to, which we'll learn the basics of that next week towards the end of the week. So there's a lot of pros to this and why I've started using n8n. It's also a little bit more developer friendly. I found that because they have the ability to execute code, they have a little bit more developer friendly things in terms of how it sets variables, how it handles loops. And it just seems a bit more intuitive in some cases than make.com. But I still use both. So just in the spirit of, showing you how everything is used in lots of different platforms, I'm going to be using both of these in this example. Some of the cons that I found out, though, is that it does take a little bit more of a technical expertise to set up, especially if you're doing it locally, and to host your own. That's obviously does take, but they do have a cloud version, which we'll be using, and you can sign up for today. And both of these services offer free options for you. And then the other thing, too, that I've been really kind of disheartened from is that there's a huge jump in price between running it locally to being able to self-host. They don't have self-hosting features for prices outside of their enterprise, which is extremely expensive. Let's just say that for basically going from free to being able to just have something as simple as another admin. So I'm hoping that they'll help for something in that middle layer for us self-hosters and for us that really appreciate and need privacy. But until then, I'm kind of just using it to run locally on my own machine, and we have our own local version that I'm the admin of until we can figure that out. But we're going to go ahead and get started. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to set up Google Sheets. We're going to use the Google Sheets one, and we're going to use make.com for this one to start with. So to sign in and to get started for free, you can just click on the button up here for getting started and fill out just this. I'm just going to go ahead and sign up with Google with the email that I know. Let me go in with a different here. Create an account, scale demo. And here I'm going to use the email. All right. So I turned on automatic transitions, but when you want to fill out things like passwords, it just automatically comes back here. So give me 1 second so I don't. Give me 1 second. 1 second. There we go. All right, about that, I will get this down. Let me sign up for it, choose a password, and I'll come right back to it. Oh, all right. Password needs 1 special character. Give me 1 second. All right. So now we have gone there. We now have to verify our account. So let's go here. All right. Now we need to go back into that email and verify that, and we should see that in here. Great. Verify with make, verify the email. Great. And we're in. All right. So it's going to ask us a few things, our role. So I'm a developer in engineering. I want to automate personal productivity. And I have a few custom. So my custom, it's only me for right now. And I've found you on YouTube. Get started. Great. And if you do sign up, please use the make.com in the description. So we're in make.com, and when you come in here, you're going to see usually your active scenarios, but since we don't have any active scenarios right now, we don't see anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a scenario. So a scenario is an automation. It's essentially something happens. It's your canvas. It's essentially what you're going to be building all of your automations in. Now there's a couple things here. So for instance, you can add team members. You can see all your scenarios. They do have, so if you need inspiration, there's a ton of leads. And that's another thing, that a lot of the things that I'll be going over here, they may have already a template, or they may have, for instance, right here, send a Gmail email from a new Google Sheets row, right? So there's usually an automation for that. And really the goal of this whole challenge is to really give you the basic building blocks so that you know what to look for, what's possible with this. So we're not going to start from a template, but one of the things, so what we're going to do here is we're going to just go here and we're going to say create new scenario. So the very first thing you have to do is start with something that's happened, right? So if you remember, what we're going to be doing in here in our trigger is we're going to be looking at our trigger in Google Sheets. So right up top, we see that's one of our verified. This is very important too, because you can have apps, because of the data that you give it control to. When you're thinking of Google or Slack or any of these, you want to make sure that they're verified apps, because you can find like a random app on the internet that integrates with Make, and you're giving it access to your entire Google Drive, which probably isn't what you want to do. So what we do is we just click on Google Sheets. So the very next screen that we see are all of the different options. So what we have here are lots of different things that we can do with this module. The one that we want to look for is watch new rows. Okay. The reason this says ACID up here, I forget what the acronym is for, but basically Let me see. It is, that's not it. Thanks. I forget what it means, but essentially what it means is that it's looking for it. And it's also going to only happen when a new row is there. So it's like looking at. So the first thing that we need to do, because we have never used this before, is we need to create a connection. So we're going to go through and we're going to create tons of connections in both Make and n8n on Friday. But we'll create a couple of them here just to get through this. Once you have these connections set up, then it'll be a lot easier because you'll just select your Google Drive and your email and you're off to the races. But in this case, we do have a little bit of extra setup. So we just say connect connection. I'm going to say digital at scale demo. And we're going to go here to this sign in with Google right here. So this opens up a, to then, so I'm going to select this, hit continue. And you can see here that we're giving it access to see, edit, create, and delete all of your Google Drive files. Don't get scared by that. But yeah, you want to give it the ability to be able to manipulate files. This is why it's also important to make sure you do it with trusted sources. And of course, it can see and delete all of your Google spreadsheets, which is the key thing that you have for this. So we're going to allow this. It's creating the connection. Great. So we now have this, and we now have some ways that we can configure this. So how are we doing that? Well, we have search method. So do we want to search by the path? Do you select from all? Do you want to enter it in manually? And basically what that means is that this will change the different pieces. So for instance, as you can see here, I can say, hey, I want to select by a path. I'm actually going to select, would be my only spreadsheet in here, digital at scale demo responses. So as you can see here, I can easily just select it. Now, there may be cases where you don't want to do that, and that's why you have this. So for instance, enter manually, right? As you can see here, this is a spreadsheet ID. Now, when would you want to use this? Let's say this was not coming from a form, but maybe, in from a different automation. Maybe the spreadsheet was newly created and you wanted to be able to then watch this or do something with it. That's why there's these different, what they call search methods. But in this case, we know which one we want. So we're just going to go ahead and select it. So now that we have the spreadsheet ID and we have the sheet name, we're going to choose which sheet name it is. And this is all in relation to, this is the name of the item, and these are, or this form responses sheet. If we had other sheets in here, they would show up well. And there's also, if for instance, let's say I didn't want form responses and maybe I added a new sheet, there's this little refresh button right here, which will go and grab it. So if you ever add a new sheet when you've already started setting this up, you can just hit this refresh button and it'll refresh, in this case, the sheets, but it could refresh the column names, all those different things. So the next thing, table contains. So what that means is, does your table actually contain a header? And in this case, it does. What that means is that row 1 is the header. Now, what if you have multiple headers? What if you have there? That's what the next one is for. So for instance, A1 to Z1 are the headers. If it was let's say 2 to Z2, because it was on there, I could just simply do that. And that is in relation to the columns are the letters and the rows are the numbers. So when you're filling this out, you're kind of, and is kind of a way in used Excel or any other sheets, you probably have seen this before, but basically it's just saying that this is the range in which you want to do it. And you do 2 numbers here instead of just like A126, because that's kind of limited. Right? You could only do 1 row, but in this case, I could say, hey, I want A1 through Z10. This would mean the first 10 rows and all of the columns are part of the headers. Or I could just say Z2. So it's just that. Or maybe I just want to do B2. So it gives you a lot more flexibility to do a 2-dimensional array. Excuse me. All right. So in this case, we're just going to say A1 to Z1. And we're going to say limit 2. Because we just want to, if we just want to have just the first 2 in this case, we're just testing. Maybe we don't want to limit there. All right, so choose where to start. So we're going to choose here. There we go. There's our first one. So we're going to say, actually, let's go ahead and choose all, see what happens. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to say run once. And what this does is it is your test. And what just popped up here is the information that was received from Google Sheets. And as you can see here, we have, let me just zoom in here a little bit so you can see that a little bit better. But we have a timestamp, we have first name, we have last name, and the other rows. We can see what row number it is. We get the spreadsheet ID. This will be useful for when we want to update it later. And then which sheet it's from. So what you're going to see is a lot of looking at this screen, right? What is data that came back, and then how do I pass this data? Now, what happens if I add another one? Let's say I go in here and I fill out a new one. So let's submit another response. I'm going to say John Doe, and John has never automated before. I hope to learn a lot. We're going to put that. We now see that John Doe is in there. And now when we go back and we run this, we see John Doe is the most recent one. So this helps us to kind of, if I want to edit this. Well, if I click on this, I can go, let me just zoom out again. So it's saying the row with headers, it's limiting it to 2, it does contain headers, and we're good to go there. Now you see this little stopwatch here. So this is how often it should run. In this case, it's just going to run at regular intervals, and this is every 15 minutes. We're going to move that down to 1. Every 1 minute. Oh, I guess the minimum value is 15 minutes. Interesting. Learning something new. And then there is advanced scheduling. So for instance, if you only wanted it to run something, from a certain time to a certain time, only certain days of the week, only certain months, maybe you're running a special, like that. But you do have the ability to really, make determinations on that. So what we want to do is next, so going back to our automation, is, something Google Sheets. One thing I should point out too is that, and this is why I'm doing the same way in both of them, but one thing to note is that if we didn't do this and we wanted to add another one, so Google has Google Forms in here. So this is another way that you could do it as well. And you're going to see this a lot in automation. There are a lot of different ways that you can that you can actually make this happen. So in this case, as you can see here, it already had my connection. And if I chose the form ID, so I can either search for this, I go in here, I could say digital, I could try to, just start. But in this case, I actually have to put in a form ID. Where that form ID is up here. If you can kind of see in the browser. So this little ID in between the D and edit, that is the ID of a form. I don't know if you can actually get that information other than right here, like in the URL. So just know that a lot of these things, the IDs are usually in the URL, and we'll go back to it. So here I can put the form ID in here, hit OK. And I can say, do I want to start from now on? I just want to do all. Okay. So let's go here. And now let's run once. So this one went through. This one did not. I'm just going to, let me go here. So if I right click on this, I have some settings. I can say run this module only, because this is the first one, and see this little step right here. So each of these, if you can look in a little bit, let me zoom in here. You can see a 1 and then a 2. So it's tried to start with the 1, which is why it ran that one. So if you're ever wondering which steps it's going to take, here's 1, here's 2. But since I only want to run this module, I can right click on this and say run this module only. And here we go. We have a little bit different format. So as you can see here, we have the response ID when it was created, and then we have answers, and it's a little bit more nested. And I don't really care for this at all, which is why I'm using this Google Sheets. This is a very important lesson, is that, how you structured and how it comes back. You want to choose the path of least resistance. And in this case, because it's so nested, because it's here, this is just kind of like really good space, as opposed to, when let me just run this one again. Oh, because I don't have any new ones. That is why. All right. This is one of the challenges of actually doing this, because it's actually, one of the things it's keeping track of is what it's actually done. What has essentially this hasn't done anything. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this module. I just wanted to show you that it is possible on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try running this again. Nope, we don't have it. So what we're going to have to do is I'm just going to, and this is one of the fun things of automation, is constantly, so I'm just going to go here, delete all the responses. So it's all clean, and I'm going to Brad, Taylor, and I'm just going to put some stuff in there. So now we have here, we've submitted another one. Now if we run this, why did it not come back? I'm wondering if it might be connected to the rows on that. Let's set up the next piece so that you can see what we're going to do with that data, and we don't have to keep going back here. So the next piece that we're doing in our automation is we've set it up with Google Sheets. We've used Google Forms for the input. And now we're going to process this. And what we're going to do is we're going to use make to create, instead of a thank you page, which we're already seeing, we're actually going to send an email. So that means we got to connect n8n to our mail. So what we do here is we just go in here and we say add another module. And in this case, what I want to do is I'll just go in here and I'll say Gmail, and going to send an email. So once again, I go in here, I say I have a connection. I want to create a connection. And this is going to then give me that sign in with Google. Interesting. Make had a bad gateway. Okay. All right. I was like, we're going to have bugs with make.com today. Yep. Let's see what we have here. It is not possible to use restricted scopes with customer at Gmail accounts. For more information on how to connect restricted scopes, visit our documentation. It's not possible to use restrict with customer. Oh, follow this with an additional steps required. So we're learning this together. I've always set this up with my own personal business account, which we'll set up tomorrow, thinking that this would be easier, but apparently not. Connecting to Google using, oh wow, it does make you do all of these things. All right, so we're gonna have to set this up to be able to do this. So what we need to do is first go in, and I didn't want to have to do this until yesterday, but we're gonna do it today. So we're gonna click on this and we'll put this in here, and we're going to, since I've already created an account, it's now gonna go in here. I wanna use this. Great, I agree. This is Google Cloud. So basically we're gonna be setting this up tomorrow along with Microsoft as well. But essentially this is where you need to kind of come and set up these applications. So in the top menu, click create or select new project. So we're gonna go here, start for free. Yep, agree and continue. Looks like I need to add payment information. So let's fun stuff. All right, let's here. Perfect. All right. Go ahead and sign up for your Google Cloud account. I'll just put this into the chat. Now that we have that in there, go ahead and, all right. I need to set up this bill. This is one of the reasons I'm doing this live, is that giving the time to go through this and do all of these things. Nothing's taken for granted. So when I hit the roadblock, you hit the roadblock too. All right, I now have that account. All right, went through updated payment method. This shouldn't cost anything. They just do that because you can spin up a lot of services. We're just going to be using this to create a project that we can then connect with n8n and also make. So with this one, so we're going to go in here. We're going to give it, I'm just a mid-size, next, learn. All of these companies want to know, why do you and who are you, so that we can market to you. Trust me, I've been on the other side of these and created plenty of these. All right, so now that we have this, what we're going to do, move this over here, and we're going to go through this process. So we're going to go up to the top, my first project. So we're now in here. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to say new project. And for this one, I'm going to call it Digital at Scale Demo. And this will be the organization. We'll just, that's great. We now have our Digital at Scale Demo project. It's being created. So now we've selected it. Now we can see that everything is in here. Name your project whatever you want, but it's good to keep all of your different things that we'll be doing in here in your own project. So the next thing we need to do is to enable the APIs. So as I mentioned yesterday, an API is what's called an application programming interface that allows two applications to do things on their behalf. This is a good example of where you'd want to limit and restrict what people can delete from your Google Drive or delete from a system. So you know, kind of the language and says what you can and cannot do. But in order to talk to that API, we need what's called an API key. Think of an API key as just you know, like a password that is on there. So it's a username and password. They're just called client ID and client secret. So just think of it as username and password. We have to set one of these up. You don't want to give these systems your actual password, your plain text password, because a lot of times they're encrypted and they're only encrypted to the service. So that's why you can't just put in your password. You have to authenticate, and it gives you a very long string that you put in there. So in order to do that, though, we have to create one. So the way that we do that is in the left over here, we go over here to API and services. And we're going to click on here to enabled APIs and services. So here at the top, you can either click on this or we can say enable. And in this case, we're going to enable Gmail API. And all I do is go in here and say enable. And we're going to go through this process for a lot of other things, for Drive, for YouTube, for a lot of different things. Why did we have to do this for Drive though? Or why do we have to do this for Gmail and not Drive? Well, because giving something access to your Gmail is a little bit different than giving it to a folder, or I mean, it can be the same depending on what you're storing on there, but they do have a little bit more security restrictions around that. So right here, to use this API, you may need credentials. So the next thing we need to do is to create all right, I'm just going over this real quick, create credentials. And we're going to be using the Gmail. And yep, we're going to be using user data. And I'm going to go ahead and go over here, a little bit over here before nothing is there. So I'm going to give it a name. So we're going to call this Digital at Scale Make, or automations. User support email is myself, this developer, contact, digital. All right, so we're going to go ahead and save this and continue. So I've gone in here, and how I got to this was, you know, the credentials, figuring this, choosing your email, then adding an email address down here for developer. I'm going to save this. And this is where you can add what are called scopes. So basically, you want to be able to lock this down as much or as little as possible. So in this case, I don't remember doing this. Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and save and continue. So it's now asking, so I didn't do anything for scopes right now. I'll see if it needs it because I did choose Gmail as part of that. So I don't think I need that. But we'll see. So then on this, it says I need to go into here. So in this case, so go to APIs, so under user type, select external, done. Click create. So right now I am on here. So under user type, in the authorized domain section, add make in the app information. So let's go back over to our app that we made. Let's go back to testing. I do not see the domains, domain verification. This is also fun of is some important information. If to keep your project in testing status, you'll be required to reauthorize it in production. You'll not be required to reauthorize the connection weekly on that. So looks like I have created the app. Here we go. Edit app. All right. I had to go into edit app and this. So app domain, authorized domains. We're going to say make.com here. And we're going to add Integromat, their old name. So here we have the authorized. This just basically says like these applications can actually talk with your application. So we add a domain. Nope, we're good on that. Developer contact information, and we're going to go ahead and save that. Great. In the scopes page, click add or remove scopes. Add any, click update. Here's some examples of scopes you may need for Gmail and Google Drive. So let's just search for Gmail. Okay. So you can see here in this little thing, we're giving it the ability to read, compose, send, and permanently delete all of your email from Gmail. Again, something you want to be very careful of. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to go ahead and choose that one, manage drafts and send emails. We want to, because we're going to want to do drafts on there, and we're going to go ahead and do that as well. We're going to go ahead and give it access to all of these Gmail scopes. There we go. All right, update. So now we've given it access to all of our Gmail, pretty much. Everything about it on our behalf. So now we'll go ahead and save, continue, and not use the test users for right now. Oh, okay, so publishing status is set to testing. Only test users able to access the app. Allowed user cap prior is 100 and counted over the entire. All right, so let's add our Hotmail as a test user. Or no, yeah. Let's see if we can add ourselves. Looks like we can. All right. So we have ourselves as test users. Great. Now we need to create our credentials. So in the left sidebar, click credentials. Then we're going to hit the create credentials, OAuth client ID. And in this type, we're going to choose web application. Name this make.com. And we're not going to do anything for JavaScript origins because we're not doing any JavaScript from there, but we do need to authorize redirect URLs. Now, what all these are for is, once again, because this is so sensitive, because you're giving this access, you don't say, hey, only redirect users. This is to protect hackers and all of the people that want to get access to your data. This is so that this is a protection, and why hooking your stuff up to these systems and through APIs is very safe. For the most part, it's all about who owns those keys, and you have to make sure that Make is okay with storing these, which you'll see here. But that's where, let me just go over here in case when I hit create, it then shows it to me. It does. So we're going to go ahead and copy this out. I'm going to move this over here, and then I'm going to back over to Make. You can see. So we've gone through and we have set up all of this. So just to recap, we went through, we had to, in order to send mail and be able to do the mail, we have to do it from here. So now we have to set up a few things in our Google console. So we went to Google Cloud, which is essentially Google's version. This is to use all of their services, their APIs. The services like YouTube, Gmail, Calendar, Drive, whatever. So we've created this and we've enabled all the APIs. We configured the OAuth screen. We created our client credentials. Now we need to add these credentials to our Make account. So in order to do that, we need to log into Make, and then in the scenario, say create connection. And then in the connection name, you'll enter a name and then show advanced settings. So in here, we say show advanced settings. We have, remember, client ID, client secret. So this is where you're, so I'm not going to show it to you right now but it basically gave me a modal on my other screen that had the client secret and the client ID. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to put this information in. So my client ID and client secrets. And I'm going to say sign in with Google. Now, when I sign in, I'm going to go here, digital at scale. You've been given access to an app that's currently being tested. You should only continue if you know the developer that invited you. I don't know. Do I know myself? All right. Why did it do that? Oh, continue. I said back to safety. All right, continue. Got it. Okay. Here it is. So when we were seeing the scopes and all the things that were there, well, this is, see these, this is where you're also telling the user, hey, what are you going to be able to do with this information? So you limit, not just, just limited to the service, but it's also limited to the different services that API may offer. So what we have here, we are now connected. So here we have the warning. We have until April 20 to reauthorize your connection. That's a lot longer than 7 days. So we got a little bit of time. So who am I going to send this to? I'm going to send this to the person that actually submitted this. So how do we do this? Well, as you can see, when I click in this, well, first off, I'm not actually, am I? Let's update our form to accept emails. So what I'm going to do is have an email. Now I'm going to say I want Bradley Taylor, and I'm going to send it. My Brad at lastrev.com. And yes, I have. Hit next. A lot of stuff. And submit. So now when we go in here and update it, we now see we have an email field. Now, in order to have that show up here, go back over here, let's run this module. Now, when we click in here, email should be in here. Let me try that again. So we're just going to try a hello world first. So I'm going to send this to Brad at lastrev.com. I'm just going to hard code it in for right now. Subject. This is a test of the make.com automation system. Do not be alarmed. This is only a test. So we can also, all that stuff. Don't know what this says, but go there. All right. Now let's just see if this sends an email. So technically this should send it to Brad at lastrev, and should be from my digital at scale demo Gmail account. So let's just try that first. So we're going to run this module only. Great. Went to Brad and the content and the subject. So now let me open up my email and look at that. We now have an email here from digital at scale demo to my Brad at lastrev. So we now know that this is able to send an email, but we want this to be sent to the email that was actually submitted in the form with the information and something about it. So with that, I'm going to go in here. I'm just going to say, let's go into, I don't know why it's not bringing this information. I'm going to try one of these other ones. I don't know why this is not coming in, but what I'm going to do sometimes, especially with some of these ones that keep track of it, I just literally get rid of it and watch new rows and choose it again. So let's just do that again and see what happens here. This is one of the things that automations sometimes get weird. I see this in both make and n8n. So table contains headers. Yes. A1 to Z1, limit to, hit OK. Okay, this is probably where we'll choose art. I want to choose all of them. Turn it off and on again. Yeah, exactly. What you have to do is just sometimes you got to turn it on and turn it off again. All right. Let's see here. Let's try it again. There we go. All right. So what we see here is we have name, Brad Taylor. This is the 2 items that were in there. So if we look, there's 2 items in here. So turning it off and turning it back on again definitely worked. So now we have timestamp, first name, last name, and these we don't have an email because we added that midstream. However, this one does have it. So now when I go in here, instead of hard coding this, because I've ran this, I can now just simply, instead of doing this, move it over here. And what that does is it says, hey, when there is an email, we want to send this email to whatever they put in there. And then, subject, your submission, and then your contents. Let's just go ahead. I received or let's say thanks first name or your submission. And the content is, looks like you want to automate. And I'm just going to put in here and we could, say choose this versus that. It could do different automations. This is a good example of like, hey, have you ever automated before? If the answer is yes, oh, great. Have this white paper that has a little bit more, information in it. But when you never automated before, maybe you send them a different white paper of like why matters, why automation, and kind of it. So this is where you can kind of having this flexibility can come in. And I'll show you how to do that in a later session. But in this case, we're just going to send it to the email. We're going to say, hey, thanks, send it back to them. We now have this. So now let's see what happens when I run this. Once again, don't have it. So let's see if I actually submit a new one, if this one works. So we're going to say this is Johnny Bravo, and I'm just going to use my email just so that we can actually look and make sure that it sent it. I'm just going to say yes, next, and just some good old ASDF test. Now I'm going to say run again. Aha. So turn it off, turn it back on, went again. So as we can see here, it ran. And in the first one, we got Johnny Bravo. And then here, it looks like this got sent. Thanks, Johnny, for your submission. So let's go over here to my email and look at that. Thanks, Johnny, for your submission. And it looks like you want to automate this. So that's a full automation using forms and using make.com and Gmail. We had a little bit of a setup thing where we had to go and set it up so that we could use Gmail. I wasn't expecting to do that today, but now we have our Gmail set up in Make. Now, how would we go about setting this up in n8n? Well, the good thing is that now that we have this thing already set up for Google, we'll do Microsoft tomorrow so that we don't have to set all that up. But what I'll do is I'll go ahead and create this in n8n so you can see the differences. So n8n.io. Like I said, this is something that I've been using a lot more, mainly because I can run it locally and have it on my own infrastructure. And what I love too, being able to see the code, love to be able to contribute to the code. And be able to kind of run my own fork off this. And that's what I do. And in one of the sessions, I will show you how you can launch your own infrastructure as well. But for the purposes of this, we're just going to go in and we're going to sign in and we're going to go here and we're going to sign out. So we're going to start a free trial, digital at scale. And let's go back over here. Wow, as I put in my password. I know one of these times I'm going to show you all as a password, but it's a good thing that I have a different password for everything. And guess what? You'll just have access to demo account. All right. So what I've done here is I've filled out my name, the email, the password, and the account name, digital at scale. And let's go ahead and, I don't want to keep up to date with their newsletter. All right. Once again, what am I here for? Sure. This. All right. So in this case, we're going to choose this one and this one just so we can go through and set it up. And this is kind of, I do like, is that I think that their setup is a little bit better because, in the workspace, it's given kind of your own cloud infrastructure. So, you have own, I think it'll be digital at scale. Yep. Here we go. So start automating. As you can see here, we have digital at scale.app.n8n.cloud. Bit of a mouthful. But we have 14 days left in this trial. Now, for both of these, I know you're probably wondering about, well, let's go through this and we'll talk about pricing. So, drops me directly into this area. So, what we're going to want to do here first is we're going to want to set up a Sheets. Don't want to upgrade right now. As you can see here, we have Google Sheets. And we're going to put in here on row added. We do not have a credential yet, but here's the nice thing is that I can go in here, and I think with this one, let me just sign in for this. I know on the self-hosted one I have to enter in all the stuff, but let's see if n8n allows. So go here, I'm going to choose my digital at scale demo, select all. And once you have all this stuff set up, it's so much easier to just get started. So a lot of what we're doing this week, like I said, is setting up your tools, just getting you acquainted. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Okay, cool. I was able to get this. So now I can say I want it to trigger. This one has every minute. So if you remember on make.com, it would only do it every 15 minutes. Here you can do it every minute. Once again, these tools have different nuances, different things that they do a little bit differently. So in this case, I get to choose from a list, and I'm going to choose this, and I'm going to choose my form responses and on there. So I'm going to fetch the test event, and as you can see, it grabbed all of these events. Once again, I actually like this layout better because it shows it to me in a nice table, or if I want to see the JSON, I can, or the schema. It gives me options so that I can actually, work with this. Also, too, which I think I really like, is this ability to edit it, right? There's lots of times throughout automation where, hey, I want it to look like this at this step. How do I get this data to look that way? And this helps you kind of edit it, pin. There's a lot of really cool things you can do with this. So we now have this, our very first, trigger. Now we're going to go in and we're going to say Gmail, and we're going to say send a message. So here is where we have to now put in, very similar to what we did on make.com. We're using auth so basically this is how we're doing it with OAuth 2. And the other thing I really like about this that I'm gonna have to put in Answer AI as well too is this, to have our assistant, is this ask. So if you have any questions, you just click this button, and this actually shows up over here where it searches the n8n documentation, and it gives me the exact steps right in here. I didn't have to open up another tab. I didn't have to say, okay, how do I do this? No, it's right here. We've already gone through all of these steps in make.com. So once again, I'm just going to go here and I'm going to add this redirect URL. If you remember, let's go back into our console. Let me make sure I'm not sharing anything I should. All right, let me just set this up real quick and then I'll show you what I did, just so that I can get out of this screen. I don't accidentally give you all my secrets. All right. So what we have to do first is we have to go in here, and if we go in here, remember we had these authorized redirect URIs, and we only put in make, right? They're all Integromat. Definitely know why they changed their name. So in this case, what we need to do is, it's already done the little dots, but basically here we have this little URL that we also need to put in there. Once again, this just authorizes it so that it's because if I didn't add this in here and it tried to get a request, it would just ignore it. So that you can't, so you're saying, hey, it can only come from this URL. Now, when I say sign in with Google, I'm now given this, continue, select all. That was just a back to safety because we're in a testing app. All right, now all right, so now we have this. We now have our, now when I go in here, I choose my Gmail account. Now we go in here, and just like in make.com, I can now say I want to go to, I want the subject to be hello. Drag the first name in there. And this is another thing, if you want a much better area that you can go in here. So hello, first name, let's put last name in there too. Why not? We're gonna be very formal. Thanks for your submission. And so we'll close that. And then for the email type, we're going to choose HTML. We're just going to say, here was your response from n8n, whatever they want to be called. What have you built? And I'm just going to put some of these things in here. Now, when I say test this step, what happens? Didn't have an email address. So let's get these out of here. The ones that don't have an email address. Delete row. There we go. Now let's go back here and let's just save it. And that's the workflow. So I noticed it's getting 3 items here, and I'm noticing that this first one, and it's saying, hey, it's invalid email address. There's probably some settings in here that says that's grabbing this information. So we probably have to tell it that it has a header. So we've options, data location on the sheet. So this is once again where we want to say where the actual data is that we want to process. So in this case, it's going to be A2 through Z, or through, let's actually just give it the actual data. So it's through G. So as you can see, A, B, C, D, E, F, G has data, and then it starts on 2. So we want A2 to G3. We'll say that. We'll say G900. That way it has all of these. Too many windows open. To G100. Now when we fetch this, interesting. It put this as a header, but shouldn't. But has the JSON table A2. Wondering why it's doing that. All right, well, let's run it. How about that? So it should run this and send it when it goes. So let's go ahead and test this workflow down here at the bottom. We can hit test workflow. As you can see, it went through. Still looks like it's having problems. What is the problem here? Cannot read properties of undefined reading split item 0. Well, let's ask that. You've already have an active starting a new session. Great. So this analyzes the error. Let's see what it does. This is where AI can really help out, is just fixing the error message cannot typically occurs when an expression in your node is trying to access a property that doesn't exist in the input data. So in this case, interesting. If I remove the header, it now says that that didn't exist. So there's something in here that I need to do. Header, there we go. Header rows 1, first data 2. There we go. It still has row 1 though in there. That's what I don't understand. Say first data is row 3. Okay, it's put in there. Header row. Oh, I think I just broke it. I definitely think I just broke it. What did I just do? Let me shift refresh. Okay. Option. Index of the row which contains the keys starts at 1. Yeah, row 1. And this is the index which contains the actual, not the keys. There we go. Here's what I don't like though, is the fact that this still has in here row 1. Even though we said the data starts, first row is row 1. I don't see this. All right, let's go back over here and see what happens when I do test workflow. If I get 3, yep, got the wrong one. See, it's that first one is sending back the actual head, even though I told it not to. Let's try 2. I don't think that would be it. Oh, no. See, that it got rid of it, but then it putting the... Why to keep putting that in there? This is a good question. I do not know why it keeps putting this as the first one, even though I keep telling it not to do that. Because it needs to have this as but it's then duplicating it. This is yet another reason why I like local, so that I can run it locally and find out what the issue is happening. But in this case, I can't. So let's figure it out together. Okay, so this timestamp. So here's the different pieces, but I don't want that. There's no difference between that and that. And then when I do that, it breaks it. Fun bugs, let me tell you. If I can't do that, I'm at the point of just like randomly on stuff now. I have no idea why it's doing this. Let's just see if it's even recognizing this. See, it's not even recognizing this first data row. Technically, this should. I think this is a bug in their system. I'm going to have to maybe take this. I don't see why this is not. Let's see what happened. No. Yeah, I'm going to have to figure out why this is not happening. So let's use good old Google or Perplexity. So one of the things that I use is Perplexity a lot, way more than Google. And I'm going to say n8n. I'm having issues with n8n Google Sheets trigger. It is displaying the header, even though I have chosen the header as row 1 and I have chosen the data starts in row 2. The header info keeps coming up in the response, making it automation fail. Search for other people that have had this issue. So I can go in here and it's just going to go and do all the Googling for me and pretty much go through there and see, as you can see here, it's creating a nice little piece. You're experiencing issues with the Google n8n the Google Sheets trigger where the header is being included. You're not alone. This issue can cause automation header row. Ensure that you correctly configure the header row in the option to specify the header should be set to 1 if your headers are indeed in the first row. However, there have been reports of issues where this setting doesn't behave as expected. I'm using Google Sheets to append data. Would like to know value sends. If your headers are not in row, you can map automatically, manually. Okay. I've just set columns dependent on header row, but then the actual disappears. All right, let's try. Let's see if there's manual mode. This is the manual mode. You know what? I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to do something here. Do nothing. I'm just going to test this event and see what happens. Yeah, gave me bad error. Map automatically mode for mapping columns. Yep, there's no bug reports and updates. n8n 6 looks like there might be a change that, or I think this might be the same one. So for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to just move this another sheet and let's see what happens when I choose it. See what happens. So I'm going to choose this sheet 1. Now I'm going to test it. That didn't return any of the. Oh, there we are. But see, and then that's going to be the problem with it because it can't. The headers there. I have not had this issue. Let me 1 second. I've done this before. I have many of these going in here. What do I do? Look at what. I'm just going to do this. We're going to change this. So I just connected my account again for its different credentials for just regular Google Sheets and also the trigger. There might be something happening with that because I see on my other ones I don't use the actual trigger. I'm just getting the sheets and then filtering it. So let's get the sheet with the document, this. So we're going to grab our digital at scale and we're going to grab our form responses and I'm going to say anything where stamp is here. We could actually put this, but actually I'm not going to filter it at all right now. But let's go ahead and test this step. Test the step. Yeah, see something going on with that particular node because as you can see here, this is grabbing it just fine and it's getting the headers, which is exactly what we need to do. So what we're going to do is get rid of this one and we will just do this and add a manual trigger. So now if I test this, we have liftoff. So went through, green means good, and we have the 2 items that got sent, and then we have this mail where it says it was sent and the different IDs. And then if I go into my Gmail, let's see here if those 2, there it is. So as you can see, it was automatically sent with n8n. Love that they put that at the end. And here's a response from n8n. So as you can see here, this is just how you can now go in and update with n8n. So now we have in both Make and in n8n, you have your very first workflow. So what I'll do is I'll be sure to upload these to the and send these out. So if you haven't already, please subscribe at digitalatScale.com. And yeah, tomorrow we're going to be going over full Microsoft and Google integration. You saw how much time that took up. Like I said, I wasn't expecting to actually have to go in there and do that for a Gmail account. But we're going to go in there and we're going to just set up our Google, our Microsoft. And that's what we're going to be doing the next 2 days is just setting up all these credentials for all the different apps that we'll be using. It's going to be some, do it along with me and you all have to, chat and we can do this together. But we're going to dive deep into Microsoft and Google products tomorrow, how they can be used. You can set up emails. So a lot of the ways that I talk to my sidekicks and my automations is I'll send it an email. And that kicks off some process. It's the easiest way for me because every single app has a share email button, so you can just send it there, and then that can kick off automations. You can make your emails a certain way. So being able to create forms and also being able to key off sends opens up a huge range of possibilities to be able to trigger. Because as you mentioned, everything has a trigger. Then you have some inputs. So in that case, you can put email in that. And then there's some process, which we'll be using n8n, make, answer AI a lot in this course. And then the output. What happens afterwards? What does the user see? What happens? Is there something sent? So join me tomorrow. We do have a couple of questions here. Oh, can you send draft? Does it have to send? No. So actually one of the things that we can do in here is when you're setting this up in make. So when we're going here for Gmail, there's a lot of different options in here. And one of them is create a draft. You can actually create a draft. And actually, that's usually what I do a lot of with my responses. We're going to learn that next week, probably next Monday, where you have certain labels automatically prepare a draft in your email box so that you're already on step 3 of preparing and writing that email for different things, and you can have different workflows for different labels. So we'll definitely learn that and how you can create a draft email. But yeah, that's a good question. So the question is, do you have to have a Google Cloud account for that? So the answer is yes. Now, if you're using Microsoft products, they have their own kind of OAuth, and we'll go over that tomorrow. But as I mentioned, a lot of these services need API access, and they do need to have this kind of client secret, client ID attached to it. So, may never have been a developer while this kind of Google Cloud, you do need to kind of, if you want it to interact with any of the make.com, any of the answer AI, any of the things that you want to do, you're gonna have to create this app. And like I said, it's something you have to set up once. Now we only gave it access to Gmail. If you remember from our discussion, we only gave it a scope of our Gmail. Now when we want this to manage our calendar, like that, we're gonna have to give it those scopes as well so that it can interact with other APIs. But yeah, you would probably need, well, even if you'd use Microsoft products, you'll probably need that anyway, because we'll be doing stuff with YouTube as well, and YouTube is a Google property, and in order to interact with its API to get things like transcripts and things like that, then yeah, you will need to interact with that. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining once again. If you found this content valuable, please feel free to share it, like it, send to your coworkers. And I'm really excited to have you along on this challenge, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.